Just a quick one before everything else. We only just got out to have a look at the track later on, and some of the boys have gone in. Was there anyone that didn't train today, or is it looking like the team are going as named heading into tomorrow night?
No, we'll go in as named, as it stands right at the moment. I can't. Did you see Paddy Dangerfield out there? No. So he did a session a bit earlier, and would have been nice for you to see that because he's going well. But as flagged for quite a few weeks now, we're going to hold him back a little longer. But he's going to be hard to keep out of the team for much longer. Reece Stanley's probably the other one, along with Cam Guthrie actually. But Reece, he's going to play a little bit of game time in the VFL this week. Won't play a full game, but we think that he's good enough to get some match practice in the VFL with a view to getting him sort of in really tip-top shape to come back into the AFL team after that. And Cam Guthrie's just had this little flare-up with his Achilles, which is going to... We were optimistic he would play some VFL game time more as match practice this week, but he hasn't quite come up well enough to do that, so we'll hold him back, likely for one more week.
Just on danger there, so you post-bye hoping to have him back? Or?
Well, look, maybe even next week. Like there's really... You know, it's hard to be really specific with where these things sit, but to give you a bit of a general idea, we've played plenty of guys confidently with the preparation he's had to play this week. So it's a good indication that he could play next week. But again, we've had a pretty strong history with this sort of thing, but even with him specifically, where we've held him back more than we thought was required and got good results off the back of it. So this feels a little similar to that situation. So probably, but every time you watch him train, you think, I'd love to have this guy out on the park now because he looks ready.
With Reece, we attempted to bring him back just given Mark Blixhubs comes out, or you backing in those younger guys like Toby Conway to hold down the fort?
Oh, no, we're definitely backing in those young guys. So we're really... confident that Shannon Neal and Toby Conway in particular will be good players for us into the future, but we're really optimistic around what they can do now as well. So I think we've said right from the start of the year that we were looking forward to getting Neal into the same team as Hawkins and Cameron, and we just weren't able to do it for a while. We did it last week, and we thought there were some really good signs there. And the fact that Reece is not quite ready, so he's really not playing this week because we just don't think he's ready. We want to see some genuine match practice. It won't be 4 quarters, but it'll be, essentially a training session in the VFL team. And then after that, we think we'll get Blitzhalves back and Stanley will be fit, and then we can make an assessment as to how we go into the game against Sydney. But we're even more strongly convicted on the idea that we want fit players ready to play their best. There's a big difference between being available and being optimal.
With your current form line at the moment, so you've lost 4 in a row for the first time in your tenure as a senior coach, I think the first time since 2006, obviously a pretty long stint between drinks. How have you absorbed that as a coach? Has it presented anything different to what you've experienced so far in your tenure here?
Just don't think of it that way. No, you can kind of repackage it many different ways. I think we've played some good teams. We've lost 3 of those games, by a kick. But even then, you sort of talk about that stuff and can sound a bit defensive. Like I think I'm consistent with it. I don't think that stuff that happened 12 months ago is relevant, much less stuff that's happened 12 years ago. But I also don't push back on, what I sort of regard as the theatre of it. It's interesting. From a media perspective, and I don't begrudge you bringing it up at all. I think as a fan, it's interesting, just not really relevant to what we do in the moment. So I've actually been really happy with the last couple of weeks in the way our players have approached it. We think we've trained some things that will make a difference in terms of the way we play. And if anything, it's just a really good test for us to deliver on the sort of things that we aspire to be. And right up towards the top of our priority list is sort of being a footy club and a footy department that goes about our business in a similar manner when things are going well, and when things are going really poorly. I don't think we were flying at the start of the year, even though the scoreline was 7-0. And I don't think it's been a disaster over the last month either. Again, not running away from it. We haven't played as well as we could have. It's interesting that we haven't lost 4 in a row for a while, but sort of the order of the losses throughout the year, I think at the end of the day, won't be that relevant. So our challenge is just to get back to playing our game as well as we possibly can, and we think we've focused on that.
So we're obviously close to the midpoint of the season where everyone sort of has played the equal number of games. Do you have an idea of where your list sits in comparison to the rest of the comp in terms of where you expect yourself to be?
Yeah, I think it's still a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
It's still a strange period where some teams have had 2 byes, other teams haven't had any. Some teams have almost, we're about to play Carlton twice. We don't play West Coast for the first time until round 24. The draw is strange in that respect. So it makes it a little bit harder. But even then, like sitting back and trying to assess where you are, I think it's important for sort of coaches to do that. And maybe even then it should be fleetingly, because in reality it doesn't really matter that much. I think even the draw, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. I think a couple of teams have probably got us at a good time over the last couple of weeks, but if we hit our straps, there's going to be a bad time to play us as well. So our challenge is sort of to make that time as close to now as possible. But I don't really know where we sit other than to say I think it's uncomfortably tight.
Chris, we've all been made aware of the or the change of interpretation of holding the ball. Have you had direct communication, or have the umpires given you, I think a couple of clubs have had the umpires there this week working through, or have you had?
Yeah, I'm just looking for clarification. I'm assuming that what's been made public is just exactly the same as the information we've got. Yeah, and look, I think it's really helpful. I think sometimes the sensationalist take on commentary around the rules can be seen as a criticism of umpires. I don't know anyone that's done that in the football, at clubland anyway. But the conversation around the interpretation is one worth having, and I think the AFL have handled it well. It was like all the rules are open to interpretation, and when there's a little bit of a shift required, then the important part is to communicate that shift, get back to what they want the rule to be, and then interpret it that way. So I've only had one game to have a look at it, but a couple of things seem obvious to me. One, when you haven't had prior opportunity, you still need to make a genuine attempt to get rid of the ball, and you won't have an eternity to make that attempt. You've got to make an attempt pretty quickly, or you're going to get pinged. And secondly, when you have had prior opportunity, and this was reinforced to us, I'm going to say 18 months ago, so when you haven't had prior opportunity, you've got to dispose of the ball almost instantaneously when you're tackled. And maybe that had softened a little bit. But again, that's not a criticism of umpires. I think they do a really good job of interpreting the game as directed. And what's changed here is a bit of a direction from the powers that be, and the umpire's job's to do as they're told, not to make up their own interpretations. So I think already off the back of one game, it's clearer to most people. But that's my observation, and I don't really listen to the stuff that's sort of said in the broader footy world. You'd be well across that, especially compared to me.
What about the
Sorry, King, did you want to keep going?
I just want to say, you're comfortable players can make the adjustment on the run?
Yeah, I think that has been proven over a long period of time. There was a time where if you pinned an arm in a tackle, the player just had no idea what to do, and he was going to get pinged holding the ball. The skill of the players now to make an attempt to dispose of the ball in that situation has been remarkable, really. I think it is another sign. If the interpretations are clarified, the players adjust really, really quickly. I think they're experts in that regard.
Can I just ask, just in terms of selection this week, with O'Connor and you've also mentioned all three, but you've got 2 ins. Gary Robb. Yes. Can you just tell me a little bit into the selection? Will I probably kind of playing more midfield or more defensive? And then obviously with the 2 guys coming out at the start, and Clark being more midfield, and that's I guess an area you guys have been beaten a little bit. That how you kind of manage that to where some people may have thought maybe some midfielders come in.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at our guys. We're really excited to keep Oisin Mullen in the team, and he has the flexibility to sort of play back. He's done some roles as a genuine inside midfielder, and we think it's likely he'll play both of those roles on the weekend. And O'Connor's similarly flexible. What we think is probably a midfielder who can go back for us rather than the other way around. So one thing we haven't wanted for this year is depth across our midfield. The part we would have liked to have had is some of those really high-level guys like Dangerfield and Cam Guthrie in peak form and in the team. So, we could have brought in more genuine inside midfielders. We just didn't think that was the area of concern for us right at the moment.
I guess with that, in terms of the VFL is going so well, and you spoke about depth, is there a moment when you start to think do we give these guys a chance, or is it what you're seeing that potentially say you don't have your Dangerfield and that's maybe where you would have liked to go on to go rather than the guys in the VFL at the moment? Yeah, it's been an interesting situation for us because again, the depth through that midfield group hasn't been the issue. We still think that some guys who have played really good AFL footy for us are still on the edge of the team. So Brandon Parfitt's an example of that. We've been pleased with the way he's been going this year. He's just been squeezed out for the last couple of weeks, and we still have Dangerfield and Guthrie to come back in. Blitzarves has been playing inside mid, so we're not short of numbers on there. It's actually hard to open up spaces for some of those guys that are going well. We're really pleased with the way Lawson Humphries is going. At VFL level, we think he'll get his chance at some stage soon. Now he's a little bit more back half than midfield, but can play mid. Mitch Hardy's been going really well, and Mitch Nevitt's a player that we earmarked to play more AFL footy to this point of the year than he has, especially given he's been playing well at the level. So again, we don't think our midfield's been performing the way it could, but it hasn't been through lack of depth in our opinion.
Just with the AFL this week or last week, Ken Hinkley and Brad both had their take on the AFL. Feel like they weren't getting as much. They were being left on hold, I think is the words that Ken used. Did you, as another long-term coach, is that the sentiment you share compared to what it's been previously in your time as a senior coach?
I think it's really difficult for me to talk about that because I didn't see. Was that on a Fox program? Was it? Yeah. Do we want to do a little plug for the program?
No.
Yeah.
You want to
Monday night.
That'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll try to park what they said because I'm not privy to it, but I'm going to push back a little bit because, as I've said, I don't think anyone can accuse me of being an AFL sycophant. And I actually think it's good that the coaches are encouraged to sort of speak their mind, even if it's a little contrary to, the position that the AFL hold on some issues, because more discussion's better, rather than feeling like you're just going to be muzzled every time you say something they don't like. And so in that context, the feedback I've got from the AFL has been really positive, and we've had lots of conversations. There are some things behind closed doors that we just flat out disagree with, but that's okay. We're not after them to roll over on every view that we have, and I'm sure they feel the same way. But in terms of the communication, I mean, we really can't fault it, can we? We've had some private discussions with them where we just sit down and go, well, let's just agree to disagree on that. But we haven't had any situations where we've thought they just don't get back to us. I think that's been one of the hallmarks of Laura's job in the early days in her position, that she was from the outset really keen to expand the conversation with the senior coaches. And again, having the conversation doesn't mean you're going to get your own way. And we wouldn't want it that way. We don't want people running the game who just roll over every time a senior coach gets annoyed at something. But yeah, I feel really confident. I mean, other people may interpret it differently when you're outspoken, but I haven't sensed that from the people at the AFL at all.
Just in terms of this weekend, what do you make of Richmond, how they're going at the moment?
sort of focusing almost exclusively on the way they played last week and the way they can play at their best. So, look, we understand clearly when you have some injury issues and you have a new coach and a new way of playing that there are some teething problems there. But they've had some challenging games this year which we don't think have any bearing at all on the way they're going to play this week. So Sydney are clearly the best team in the competition as it stands right now. The only team that's beaten them is Richmond. We're expecting that version.
Just on last week, Dusty was back to his best. Is that the Dusty that you expect? And I suppose I've got no Shea Bolton. He's out. Dion Presti has bizarrely been rested. He's sort of the one weapon that they do have out on field. Do you look to give him a bit more attention?
Yeah, no, we have to give him more attention, but I'll push back on him being the only weapon. Well, again, I look at their backline, and Loston's been one of the great players in his position of a generation, in my opinion. You know, Short's back there, Baker's back in their team, probably a bit more midfield. Broad's a good player. They've got, for a team that's sort of been hit by injury, you sort of look through it and think, I can still find some pretty good players in that team. But yeah, no one respects Dustin more than us.
So just asked about Tom Stewart. He's been under a fair bit of external focus from the opposition in recent weeks, it seems like. Maybe we're just talking about it more as a media cohort. But how do you handle Tom in this situation? Because it feels like he's got a fair challenge in front of him to overcome what's being thrown his way.
I don't see it that way. I think he's challenged every week, and I think, I mean, if I were in your position and we'd lost 4 in a row, I'd be kind of looking at who have been their best players and how well are they going. I don't think Tom's been absolutely at his best, but the opposition put work into him every week, and the difference is he hasn't quite played as well, and the team certainly hasn't played as well. But over the course of, I don't know what it is, 7 or 8 years, I reckon he's running about 80-90% win rate against those sort of tactics. So I don't think the challenge is any different for him now to the one it's been in the past. But he might be a little bit reflective of the overall team, and that is we've had some really important players for us who have just been less than their best, and collectively that's compounded into us losing 3 games by about a kick.
Jed, you used to play VFL tomorrow for Chris.
Has he been cleared? Absolutely. Yeah, we're so he had little ankle syndesmosis. There's no such thing as a little syndesmosis, but it was not on the major end of the scale. So we just wanted to make sure that, again, like he's different to, say, Reece Stanley, who's playing for match practice. We wanted to make sure that Jed was ready to come in and play well, and we're confident he's there.